I'm Iris Tao in for Steve Lance. We start tonight with protests turned riots in Los Angeles. California's governor and attorney general are now suing the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard. NTD's David Lamb has the details of the lawsuit.
Starting off the week, California officials are asking a federal court to block President Trump's recent order, which aims to quell protests in Los Angeles.
In the early hours of Sunday morning, President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth unlawfully federalized 2,000 California National Guard troops for 60 days, with no indication as to when they intend to stand down.
That was Attorney General Rob Bonta in a virtual press conference. According to the lawsuit, Governor Gavin Newsom and Bonta argue that the federal government has overstepped its authority and bypassed the governor's approval to take over a unit of the California National Guard. In a recent post on X, Newsom said Trump is, quote, creating fear and terror. Bonta says conditions for a National Guard deployment are when there's an invasion from armed foreign individuals or a rebellion to overthrow leadership. They say federal intervention was not needed and the situation doesn't meet the criteria for federalization. The lawsuit seeks to invalidate Trump's order. The Attorney General also has a message for the rioters.
What we see sometimes is outside folks not interested in the underlying substantive issues that are leading to the protests that are being called out and where change is being sought. They sometimes embed themselves or use the protests as cover for chaotic, harmful, destructive, and criminal actions. And that is wrong. Follow the law. If you don't follow the law, we will find you and we will come for you and we will hold you accountable.
The White House says that incidents of violence and disorder have occurred and threatened immigration enforcement, which constitute a form of rebellion against the U.S. government. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
And President Trump doubling down on deploying the National Guard despite the California governor's objection. The president says he has no choice but to quell what could have turned into an insurrection. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more. A senior Trump administration official confirmed to NTD on Monday that 500 active duty U.S. Marines have been deployed from Camp Pendleton in Southern California to Los Angeles, that to help protect federal agents as well as federal buildings. The White House says that's in response to increased threats against federal agents and buildings, and it comes as President Trump says his intelligence team believes that behind those violent protests are professional agitators.
What does your intel tell you about these people causing all the problems in LA?
The people that are causing the problem are professional agitators. They're insurrectionists. They're bad people. They should be in jail.
Over the weekend, President Trump deployed around 2,000 National Guards, overriding California Governor Gavin Newsom's objection. While Trump is the first president to do so without the governor's consent in about 60 years, he defended the move on Monday, saying he had to do so because Democratic leaders there are not doing enough to quell the protests.
We're lucky we did this because they were overwhelmed. But you have a governor who let the city burn down.
Governor Newsom on Monday sued the Trump administration, arguing that Trump overstepped his authority and violated the Constitution. And Trump, meanwhile, says he had no choice.
I feel we had no choice. I watched Minneapolis burn. Look at what happened in so many different parts of California. We want to be nice to the criminal. And what you're doing is destroying the fabric of our life in this country.
While calling violent protesters insurrectionists, President Trump says he won't call the situation in Los Angeles an insurrection yet, although he says it could have led to one. Unless Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, U.S. military cannot perform law enforcement duties inside the U.S.
It's now heading in the right direction, and we hope to have the support of Gavin.
In other news, U.S. and China held their second round of trade talks on Monday in London. Trump says he's getting good reports as the two teams will continue talking on Tuesday.
China has been ripping off the United States for many years. Nobody charged them 10 cents.
Trump was speaking at a roundtable to promote what his administration calls Trump accounts, which would give every American newborn an $1,000 investment account that their parents can keep putting money into while deferring tax. The policy is part of Trump's big, beautiful bill that he's trying to get Senate to pass, and the White House says this move would give American children a financial head start. The Pentagon reports that in total, around 700 Marines are heading to Los Angeles. Turning now to the U.S.-China trade war. Top negotiators from both nations today meeting in London for key trade talks. This as the Trump administration is demanding China to ease export restrictions on rare earth minerals. And this morning, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett says the U.S. is open to lifting trade barriers on selling microchips to China. But he says the concession will not include high-end semiconductors from NVIDIA, an American tech firm specialized in making cutting-edge chips. In exchange, China is required to release rare earth minerals into the U.S. market. The meeting comes after both countries agreed back in Geneva to reduce tariffs on each other for 90 days. But the Trump administration has also accused the Chinese Communist Party of slow-walking its trade commitment with the U.S., especially when it comes to rare earth elements. These minerals are vital for advanced technologies from everyday electronic devices to military weapons like missiles and fighter jets. China currently dominates the world's production and refinement of rare earth elements. Meanwhile, the communist regime falls far behind the U.S. on semiconductor manufacturing. As of now, officials from China and the U.S. are slated to meet again for another round of talks tomorrow. With Marines now heading to Los Angeles and California suing over the National Guard deployment, what does the Constitution say about the president's use of the National Guard to quell the riots in Los Angeles? NTD Steve Land spoke with Nevada Republican Congressman Mark Amodei.
Congressman, about 300 National Guard troops now on the ground in the city of Los Angeles, this all to protect federal property and personnel. Among other things, protesters have set cars on fire, throwing and smashing police cars with bricks, rocks, and other objects. What is your reaction to all of this, and do you see this as a representative of public sentiment or something of a more organized nature?
Well, I think it's probably fairly localized in terms of the folks in Southern California. Remember back in 2020, we had some issues regarding the ability to protect federal operations and federal facilities in the Pacific Northwest. So when this looked like it was starting to head that way again, you know what? I think the response is appropriate. You got folks from Homeland Security doing their mission. You got facilities that are federal facilities that are coming under direct attack. And it's like, this is entirely appropriate in terms of making sure that the federal operations down there and the federal facilities down there are protected and well supported.
From your perspective, is activating the National Guard within the president's constitutional rights?
Yeah, I think it is based on what was, and by the way, the president didn't set the stage for what was being done down there. The folks down there that required the presence of the Guard were the ones who kind of set that stage, if you will. And I don't want to be disrespectful to the mayor or the governor, but their track record in terms of federal operations in terms of Homeland Security isn't strong. So they may be upset that they don't have more of a say in it, but they've quite frankly earned the tiny say that they have in it. We're going to protect our folks, and we're going to do what we need to for the homeland issues down there that have been neglected for the previous administration.
Congressman, I want to turn our attention overseas to the U.S.-China trade talks, which are underway today in London. China saying that some rare earth exports were approved ahead of the talks. This was sort of at the crux of why things weren't moving along. Do you see Beijing playing the rare earths card? And if so, what might the United States leverage in response?
Well, I think I heard something recently that said 85% of Beijing's exports are to the United States of America. Let me translate that to one word: lever. And so there are cards that we have to play, and I think that this administration is off to a good start on using that leverage to the maximum amount possible. Obviously, the folks in Beijing are not going to roll over easy or stuff like that, but since a lot of it revolves around money, which basically covers everything from defense to the economy to other stuff, we're not. I think we've got plenty of leverage to make sure we bring about a change with our number one competitor, our number one adversary, you name it. So I like where we're at, and I think the team that's representing us on the field there has done a pretty good job so far. So keep up the good work.
Congressman, recently FBI Director Kash Patel said on one of the podcasts, I can't recall if it was Joe Rogan, that the CCP is deliberately fueling the United States fentanyl crisis as part of a long-term strategy to weaken America vis-a-vis military-aged men. Has the United States' effort to counter this threat shown progress, and what more can we do?
Well, there's a lot more you can do, and yes, it's shown progress, but you need to remember that where we started out from the previous administration 4 years, there was almost nothing done. So there's plenty of headroom, if you will, to grow our efforts taller. And so we've done that in the Homeland Appropriations Bill that's coming forward right now in terms of all of those Homeland agencies, whether that's Border Patrol, whether that's ICE, whether that's Coast Guard, all of those folks, as well as the DOJ agencies, I think are on full alert. But listen, it's one of those things you never want to say mission accomplished, because this will be one of those things where you got to get up every day and turn that crank and produce, because the other side's doing the same thing, and we've still got catching up.
To your point, the Homeland Security budget up for consideration earlier this afternoon. In your view, what are some key provisions in this bill that address our national security priorities?
Well, you've got, first leading the way, you've got Border Patrol and ICE doing their traditional job that they had been largely diverted from in the previous administration. So you've got them paying attention to borders, paying attention to customs shipments, paying attention to who's in the country and who needs to not be in the country anymore. Those are typical missions for those folks, as well as also more resources for the Coast Guard to do their missions in those waterways, not only around the country, but also farther away. It's not just a localized mission for those folks. So there's a lot of getting back to basics for those folks, and this budget will allow them to do that and fulfill what the country expects with respect to border security and those sorts of operations.
Congressman Mark Amodei, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. today says he's removing an entire panel of vaccine advisors at the CDC. The panel, dubbed the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, makes recommendations on who gets to take the shots and how insurance companies pay for them. In a statement, Kennedy says the firing is to prioritize, quote, the restoration of public trust above any specific pro or anti-vaccine agenda.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.